partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast number 312 with your host, me, Casey Seymour, and my good friend, Lou Bordoni. And he is the what do you do? What is your exact title, Lou?
Well, the last set of cards they made up for me.
Wash bay guy.
Equipment marketing and export manager is what I handle. So I mean I focus on used equipment, used large ag, used inventory, and once it's traded, right? And then anything unconventional, so anything out of area, exports, anything that's kind of out of the box.
Gotcha. Right on. And so you're a used equipment guy. You're dealing with stuff that's happening out there. You're buying and selling stuff all over the world, making things happen. And needless to say, the last couple of years have been, it's the best way to put this, interesting is probably the easiest term to use. That's the most widespread because it's been everything plus that and more. When you start looking at not having inventory to sell export-wise, not having inventory to sell used in your territory, not having inventory to sell new, that stuff's starting to kind of catch up or starting to see that start to unfold. So I guess, Lou, looking over this last couple of years, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you guys have had to overcome, and what are some of the biggest hurdles you think that are set in front of you?
So I guess I'll start off by saying that, and you and I have talked about this before, not all regions are created equal. And I mean, different regions throughout all this madness and all this uncertainty, I think that different regions of the country have had a different set of challenges, right? And as far as we go, down here in the Southeast, so I mean, we're down in Southwest Georgia, so I mean, crop mix, I mean, we've been through this before, but cotton, peanuts, a little bit of corn, some produce, pecans, but as far as what we're really following as proxies are going to be cotton and peanuts. The majority of our business is done through multi-unit. Most of our new equipment is sold through multi-unit deals. So you've got larger producers that are rolling their equipment at a predefined cycle, and that's how we seed our used equipment program. And the reason I explain that is because due to the nature of how we operate, we've had delays, I mean, no doubt, but we've gotten the equipment we've needed. We haven't held anybody up significantly. We haven't been unable to deliver. And again, in parentheses, referring to large ag, right? I mean, obviously, if you want to start getting to small ag and consumer products and all that, that's a whole nother ball of wax, which we're not going to get into. So we've had equipment, right? It's been delayed. So our biggest thing has been managing that and managing the fact that you'll do without any inventory for several months, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open and you have a lot of equipment hit the ground at the same time. And so obviously that puts a lot of pressure on us from a marketing standpoint, but that leads to our second challenge, which is a personnel issues. I think everybody's grappling with that around the country. You've got these shops where you've got people coming and going, and we're busier than we ever have. We don't have a downtime anymore during the year. So if you've got a couple dozen tractors hitting the ground in a matter of 30 days, getting the new tractors in, getting them PDI'd, getting the used through that shop, and keeping up with our regular customer base has become a real challenge. So we have found ourselves extending working hours throughout the year. We've really been leveraging student programs. I mean, we've got guys coming in and after school. We've got a tech school there in our region, so that we're very lucky in that regard. So we're able to put kind of our top tier techs on customer work, and then kind of handling the rest of the maybe not as complicated work, using some of the newer techs and some of the student techs. So obvious other challenge is pricing. I mean, everybody's talking about the same thing. We have really had to hone our craft as far as, and I'm speaking specifically about our retail sales team, having to go out there and have some serious conversations with these customers. And where back before it was you kind of knew where things were going. You knew what the price increase was roughly. I mean, the customers were kind of used to it. Well, in this environment, you're having to sit down and explain and try to figure out what you can do and what we can do to bring more value to these deals to justify some of these price increases. So that's a lot of what we've been grappling with. Fortunately, as far as what's production wise, peanuts were down just a little bit due to some kind of early season issues. Cotton was up. I mean, and cotton pricing was pretty good for the majority of the year. So the guys that were able to do some smart buying and some smart marketing, I think came out pretty well. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on down here, or that's what's happened in the last couple of months.
Okay. So you guys do a lot of export business. You do a lot of stuff all over the place, a lot of things like that. Over the last couple of years, as you looked at that export business, I mean, we could have sold our inventory 10 times over export-wise, because, I mean, everyone's in the same position that we are. And it's just the further away you get from the manufacturer in major markets, the more amplified that those issues become. How did you handle the export business, and what machinery? How did you determine what machines you're going to keep and what machines you're going to export?
It's a good question. So, I mean, we put export opportunities and really out of region opportunities in the same analytical bucket, as far as how we discuss it and how we manage it. Because as far as the team is concerned, they're really the same. The only difference is, what it takes to get them done and kind of the nuts and bolts of it, right?
Sure.
And so I've always kind of put export opportunities due to how much work they are, and how much, and the fact that, yeah, I mean, and here lately it's been getting harder and harder because, I mean, a lot of those services, like getting somebody to come in and do like an export level cleaning, right, trucking, serious breakdowns and all that kind of things. I mean, all those vendors and those services have become much more expensive, harder to coordinate. So it's a challenge, but going back to kind of our decision matrix there, it's, I'd say a year ago, we weren't really looking for export opportunities. And I mean, obviously we're trying to retain those relationships and kind of keeping those folks on the call list and staying in touch with them and just explaining to them what the situation was. And they understood. If we were having, it's funny because it's like a converse relationship there. If you thought that we were having if people think that we were having supply chain issues, you can only imagine the supply chain challenges that they were dealing with, outside the U.S. I mean, you've got the country that produces the majority of, grade A farm equipment on the planet, and we were having challenges. Imagine the rest of the country or the rest of the world. Yeah. So the phone was ringing off the hook for new, for used, for barely running. And we couldn't do it. I mean, we had to kind of prioritize with our local retail clientele. Yep. And the same thing with dealers. I mean, we had dealers that know that we're for instance, a very tractor intensive area. And when guys were running out of stuff, I remember going to your meeting 2 years ago, and that was like the bar top conversation. Have you got some of these? Have you got any of these? Were you willing to give one of these up? It doesn't have to be now. What about, have you got anything coming in 3 to 6 months? Yeah. And the answer had to be right now. We just need to cover our bases.
Yep.
So our focus is always twofold. I mean, number one is to make sure that we keep our retail and our area of focus, our customer base rolling, and then the second priority is the health of our business and health of our balance and health of our inventory. So we've used exporting and trading with other dealers for the second. When we're heavy on something, we sit down with someone that's got something that we need and we do some swapping. But there was a time there where we didn't have much of anything, Right. So we just had to press the pause button. Now that's changed in the last couple of months. I mean, we've been much more open to those opportunities.
Yeah. So same with us. When you look at what we have going on, same scenario that you just laid out there, the exact same thing that we've had happen to us. Varying lines of equipment had varying different rules depending on what it was. But if you're looking at how we handle a combine versus how we handle a row crop tractor versus how we handle a forage harvester and how we handle a baler, I mean, all those things start to play. They all have different rules and different points of entry depending on what you're doing, who you're talking to, and what it is. And also, too, we started playing the whole game of, all right, so these are the machines we want to keep here. These are the machines that we want to, cycle out someplace else. And we're talking 6, 7, 8,000 hour tractors. We're talking, in higher hour stuff. We're talking, 4 and 5 generational balers. We're talking, 1,200 to, separator hour, 2,000 separator hour combine. I mean, you start running on that list of stuff that the stuff we're trading in anymore is the stuff that's getting harder to move because of, what it is. And I think, and I'd like this is something I've been thinking about, Lou, and I'd love your opinion on it. But, when you look at how the market's playing out right now, we kind of had 2 back-to-back, the more I think about it, 2 back-to-back kind of smacks in the face a little bit from an economy perspective. So we had this 2012 through 2014, mass production, and then the lag time behind that from 14 to 20, where we were fighting inventory issues and builds up of inventories and those kind of things, and working through that constant cycle of used to where 2020 kind of comes along and kind of clears all that stuff out, and then we're down to 21, 22. And now we're going back into the same scenario, but it's a different scenario. It's the inverse of what we had happen before, where the front side of the washout cycle is really full of that 1, 2, 3-year-old stuff. And what's being traded in now is the stuff it might be 7, 8 years old, and it's got 3, 4, 5, 6,000 hours on it. You got the 2,000 hour combines, you got the 1,500 hour, 2,000 hour choppers, and the 25, 30,000 bell balers, those kind of things. The guys are trading that stuff in to upgrade to that stuff. But the bad thing about it is there's the gap between that. There's nothing in the middle, right? Yeah. And you're trying to figure out what that looks like and where that is. So my theory and philosophy on this is we're going to see this huge gap in the marketplace that of that,
we're seeing it.
750 to 1,500 hour tractor, that 750 to 1,000 hour combine. Start looking at 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 bale balers, those kind of things, where you've got that middle of the road, third trade stock customer that you're looking at. So right now, if you want to buy something, it's really, really, really new, or really, really, really old, and there's nothing in the middle. And the bad thing about it is, where my fear lies in this whole thing is that gap. It's going to take forever for that gap to get filled up, because if you bought a new tractor today, with the way things are and the economies of scale and those kind of things, you're probably going to keep that tractor for longer than you did previously.
And it's going to become that high hour tractor.
Yeah. So now we're just kind of like we're skipping an entire generation of equipment, because it just won't make it back to the dealership as frequently as we've seen it make it in the past.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that, man? You seen something similar like that?
Well, that's a phenomenal question, and that's, we sat down with the group a couple of days ago, so kind of as a conversation kind of had as needed. Our group has we've rolled out where we sit down. Our entire management team sits down in a room face to face once every 30 days, and we are going around the room and we're discussing what everybody has seen. And we're getting better and better at it, where before it was, bring your coffee in and come to talk, about what's going on and what are we doing with this, what are we doing with that. We're getting to where those meetings are getting a lot more and more productive, because I think that everybody's seen that they yield some results. And that's a roundabout way of saying that I think the strategy here is to chip away at things as they appear. And what I mean by that is, so-and-so's thinking that so-and-so wants to go ahead and trade, well, how many tractors is it? This could be before the tractors get ordered, well, what kind of appetite do we have for that deal? Do we really need to do it? Where would we go with it? What are the hours on it? What other deals do we have coming down the pipeline? All the things that we always say that we should be doing, we're putting a lot more emphasis on now. And I don't think there's like a silver bullet, one thing that if you do this, you'll be able to be in a comfortable position where your inventory is all of a sudden balanced, and you've got the 30%, 500 to 1,000 hour tractors, and 30%, 1,000 to 3,000, and another 20 something percent of tractors that are 3,000 hours and above, which is the ideal, something for everyone. I think that right now you nailed it. There was a big gap there where we cleared out everything. Every dealer in the country got down to where they had very, 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 and it's easy to talk about when you're talking about these kind of things. It's easy to just refer to tractors. So that's kind of what I'm referring to. Everybody cleared out of everything. And all of a sudden you have this lag.
On that very same thing, Lou, that was the first thing that actually got decimated as far as inventory levels go.
Yeah.
Was used tractors just got sucked up. It was almost like a 3-month period where they just went from being like, holy crap, what do we do with all these tractors, to, because remember, there was that stretch there where that 3,000 to 5,000 hour tractor was wicked hot, that $100,000, $150,000 tractor. And it kind of got gobbled up, and then when that all went away, then they started chipping away at the other stuff. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Yeah, you nailed it. But I think that's a long-winded way of saying that we started from essentially scratch. So cleared out of everything, because there was the phone was ringing off the hook because there was demand around the country, right? And if you couldn't retail a tractor, there was somebody else that needed one, and you could trade it for something else that you needed. So, you couldn't move fast enough. I remember, it was a struggle for advertising. We were having real problems doing advertising because by the time something hit the ground, it was already sold. Right. And all of a sudden, so everything gets cleared out, and then new tractors start hitting the ground. So exactly what you said, you've got tractors hitting the ground, but their majority can fit into this equipment category. we put a little bit more hours on tractors here. So, I mean, they'd be 500 to say 1,500 hour, almost 2,000 hour tractors. So we're lucky in that regard, that we probably have a little bit wider selection as far as a customer base and pricing,
Sure.
but maybe some of your other dealers in the, I don't know, Midwest or out where they're only putting 400 or 500 hours a year on a tractor. So in that regard, that's good. But I think the name of the game is to then go out there and where our focus is always on that A customer, like what's the A customer going to do? What's the A customer going to do? Our focus now is on cataloging and really putting emphasis on what that B and C customer is going to do before they come and tell us what that's going to be, right? So go out and call that guy that normally buys a 2,000 hour tractor and runs it till it has 4,000 hours. Well, give him a call, see where he's at. Is he ready to do something? And man, listen, we got a really great deal on a 8R250. He's got 1,800 hours. We'll throw some extra warranty on there. And so what we try to do there is bring that guy into the fold because we know what he's got. I mean, he's got a really nice 8245R that's got, 3,500 hours, and we know we can do something with that tractor. So it's just deal by deal, chipping away at, and it may be, I mean, we did a deal a couple of weeks ago where, we had a bunch of kind of low horsepower 8Rs and ranged from 500 to almost 2,000 hours, same customer. And so we don't normally would look at all those tractors as, in one batch. Now we're splitting them up and we're trying to identify the right buyer, and with the goal being to get back in a balanced position as soon as possible. Because the last thing you want to do is be stacked up with a certain category of tractors and like not be able to move those. But then you've got this other sector of your customer base that's willing to move, but you don't have anything for them. So we want to get back to that's our number one priority.
And diversification inventory is a big deal.
Huge. Huge.
I understand where that stuff fits in that washout cycle and how that washout cycle comes together. And knowing that you got to have this many tractors in this section to this section to this section to this section, knowing that as that stuff starts to matriculate through the washout cycle, you're going to gain inventory. You know what I mean? You start out with 10. By the time you get to that third bucket where everyone's ready to start buying that, 2,500 hour tractor, something like that, if you're not careful and then managing that along the way, you could wake up and say, like, I've got 15 customers for 45 tractors. You know what I mean? You got to manage that all the way through, but you can't scalp it so early that when it gets to here, you don't have enough of those tractors.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You nailed it, and it all starts with, and this is hard. I mean, it's not black and white. And let me tell you what my opinion on why people say it's not black and white. Well, you've got a lot more. We have a lot more control over that than what we give ourselves credit for. And we're putting that into practice now. And what I mean by that is we're not waiting for that customer to approach us. We're going out, we're going to them, we're trying to find them. And what I mean by that is whether that's within our retail sector or whether that's a somebody out of area that's got something that we need and vice versa, where we can kind of fill that hole. We've always done it to some degree. I mean, we've always done it. We've always done it to some degree. But I mean, I think now that it's a question of if you don't do it, you know what can happen, because most of us that are in the industry today, the last kind of shitstorm, we were all probably where we are today when that went down. So we all know what the repercussions are. I came in on the tail end of that last madness, like back in the whatever it was, 2015, 16, and kind of helped kind of clean that up. But I'd never seen that before. I mean, I wouldn't have known what to do and how to manage it if I was working in a different capacity. But now we've been through it and we know how painful it is. So man, we're doing everything we can to avoid that. And I think so far, I would give us a pretty decent mark. I think we're doing all the right things. there's a lot of uncertainties going into 2023, but I mean, those things are out of your control. You do the best you can every day,
Yeah. And I think, I hear people cussing, the allocation systems that I don't care what manufacturer line you're doing, whether it's trucks, tractors, boats, whatever. I mean, everyone's got an allocation system that's running. That's gonna absolutely save the way we do business with the machinery that we've got right now. I mean, in my opinion, I think when you look at the allocation systems that are in place, I hope they don't go away. Yeah. I really do. I hope that they look at the marketplace, they figure out what it is that's going on and how all these things kind of work together and marry up and try to keep some kind of a healthy ecosystem going. Because I think all these manufacturers learned a lesson in 12, 13, 14 that you just can't build stuff in the parking lot. You know what I mean? You gotta have.
You don't have to.
You don't have to do that. I mean, there's things that you can do that you can move things online. And it's across the board. I mean, if you look at what you see happening right now with cars, I mean, the best thing that happened in the auto market was what we see happen right now, because you know how many articles I read about GM and BMW and all these people that had these huge lease returns coming back, and had no earthly clue what they were going to do with them. Well, lo and behold, all that stuff, same thing that happened with us. Their pendulum moved. It was probably their 12 through 14 was more like 15 through 18. And because they started writing so many leases on these cars, they got more expensive. Now they have this lease return come back. This big lease return glut come back, and it happened at the right amount of time. Man, I tell you what, it showed up as production started to slow, and they couldn't keep up, and they had this big reserve of used equipment, just like we did, and it kind of bailed them out through the first couple of years, and now they're kind of at the same situation that we're at, where everybody's getting to start over with a clean slate, that they don't have to come in and try to sell a bunch of new equipment into a bunch of used equipment that they've already got. They've got an opportunity to fill the cabinet back up with good, healthy food, not a bunch of Twinkies and Ding Dongs. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? So you've got an opportunity there to win.
Nail it. That's it.
It's a great opportunity to reset the marketplace in a healthy fashion so that everybody wins, customers included. You know what I mean? I mean, everybody comes across the board wins at something, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there is, we go out and have an auction and get your head ripped off on something, and then the next piece comes in to trade 2 weeks after that auction happened. The market's been reset now.
Right.
So now you've got this machine over here that sold for $80,000, and we can't put 150 in yours now, right? It's $80,000, And I think that's that opportunity for that reset to where everything gets shifted to one place, and we get to go back into a good, sound, healthy market, and then rebuild that. Now it's up to us, to not go screw it up. But I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's the beautiful thing that I think that's in front of us right now.
Yeah. You nailed it. And I mean, I'm going back to, the last time I came on here, and I mean, you're echoing exactly my sentiments from back then, is that, we've got a hell of an opportunity. It's not without its challenges.
Sure.
Because you've got some customers that are having to, we're having to do our due diligence to make sure that we're protecting our customers, protecting their financial, standings, and there's some customers that are having to really think long and hard about doing deals and how they're going to do them and how they're going to come up with, how they're going to be able to move forward. So I mean, it's not without its challenges, but you look at what these manufacturers have done. I mean, they act. I like to say it almost happened by accident. It's like they learned these things on accident, because for however long, the name of the game has been how many assets can you produce out? Yeah. How many can you produce, man? How many can you produce? And then put the programs out there to facilitate, getting them invoiced, and go. Don't worry about so much about margin and profitability. It's always been a concern, but the name of the game was truck them. And look what's happened now. I mean, due to the situation, things have throttled back, and and look at these manufacturers' margins. I mean, look at where John Deere's trading today. They figured out that they can have a pretty healthy business and not be pushing so much paper. And so I think our responsibility now is, is to take a cue and keep this thing going and be healthy about it and not mess it up. And we can do it. We all, I think our industry is different than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah. I think we're having different discussions than what we were even when I started this job. Some of the terms that we're throwing around now and some of the concerns that we're throwing around now and some of the strategy conversations were not as deep and they weren't as evolved as they are today. And that's a good thing. Everybody needs to evolve, including industries.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying there, and this is something I've been paying attention to as well, is like everything has gotten to be so big that everything is amplified now, right? So whether we're talking on the dealership side or whether we're talking the producer side or whatever we're talking about, the business structure and the scope of business that we see right now has gotten to be so big, so massive that we're talking about billions of dollars. We're talking about, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. We're talking in big numbers here that we didn't 10 years ago. No one even thought about a $1 billion business. There were a few out there, those kind of things, but
few and far between.
$100 million businesses were pretty common. Now we're looking at $100 million business, and that's like, you're kind of
you don't even make the list.
Guy. Yeah, you're short list fellow. So, I think there's that magnitude what we're seeing there. So let's jump back real quick and talk about that gap in that equipment that we talked about in that structure. So
I was about to circle back to that because I wanted to make a point about that, but go ahead.
Okay. So I think one thing that we're going to see that's going to combat that is how these upgrade kits start to play into that section, right? So we're looking at right now, about every manufacturing line has got upgrade kits for sprayers and upgrade kits for planters, right? Whether it's Precision or Deere's performance upgrade kits or whatever it is. And you start looking at how those things start to play in. So I want to upgrade my piece of equipment, right? I want to do some different stuff. I want to do, get the new piece of equipment, but I just can't quite swing the whatever $600,000 for this and $400,000 for that. But I can swing what it costs to upgrade the components that I want on the new piece, right? I'm not really interested about the horsepower of the engine or the transmission, those kind of things, but I'm more concerned about how the sprayer operates and functionally works and what it does and doesn't do, how the planter plants and those kind of things. I'm not too worried about the bar, as long as my bar doesn't have some stress fractures or some kind of a failure of sorts, some kind of compromise in the integrity of the bar, something like that. But I can upgrade the parts that actually do the work that I want it to do.
Sure.
So I'm looking at this as also, this autonomy thing with tractors, autonomous tractors and what those look like. There's going to be kits that are going to be able to replace a certain model year and newer. Are going to be able to functionally get this. Yeah, it's going to get this kit on there, and you can make it do what the new one's going to do. I think manufacturers have taken a hard look at this, and they have made a decision, to some extent, a decision that, we can make a similar profit margin by selling these components as we can selling the entire machine. And, I think that's going to be what fills that gap, right? I'm going to be able to take my 6 or 8 year old planter and make it a new planter. I'm going to be able to take my 6 or 8, 9 year old sprayer and make it a new sprayer, And by that time, I may have done it 2 times or 3 times where I've added this or taken this off and done this, that, and the other thing. I think that's going to fill that gap. I think those are going to be there. But now we start working into a whole new discussion of a whole brand new industry of used components, and used equipment is no longer used equipment; it's used components. So, what am I going to do with that? What am I going to do with a Gen 2, wet system off of a sprayer? Or what am I going to do with 5-year-old row units off of a planter? And you start looking at that secondary marketplace for those things, where the guy's got a Gen 1, he's going to go to Gen 3 now because there's a used set out there you can take that look at. Have you thought about that much, or is that anything that you kicked around your head?
Yeah, we've thought about it. So we went through, and I'll be honest with you, we're a little bit behind the eight ball. We've certainly discussed it enough, but we haven't been. I mean, we've done a couple retrofits, mostly to planters. And when I say a few, I mean a few. Sprayers. I mean, we put the kits out there. We put the retrofit kits out there to our customers, and we haven't been real successul in doing so. I mean, we've got our AMS team has been, our technology team, I guess, has been kind of pushing it, but we looked at it and we thought about, can we go out there and pool a certain number of customers, especially with what planters are costing, and bring them in, explain to them kind of what we were going to do, and it'd give us an opportunity. But we did one, we did a trial, on a big machine, on a big cotton planter, and we looked at the time commitment to do that work. And I'll be honest with you, right now is where it stands. I mean, this may change tomorrow out of necessity, but right now we kind of had to prioritize, where we need to spend our where we need to allocate our labor, and that's where that project kind of was left. I think there's a hell of an opportunity, but there's a commitment there. Now it has opened the door up for some aftermarket vendors. I mean, we've got one group down here that does a really good job of that, and they've been out there going and doing their own kind of retrofits on planters and some equipment, also upgrading some automation on equipment. I think at the end of the day, backing up a step or two, upgrades, we look at equipment upgrades functionally a little bit different maybe than what the manufacturers do. I look at them as a way to, the front end of your trade cycle is heavy, at least in our area it is, and it's going in that direction. Equipment's getting more and more expensive. It's getting bigger. It's getting more complex, and therefore it's getting harder to put in the hands of that second and third owner, right? We've already discussed this. Well, so we've got to get that equipment down to where it's affordable, for that second and third owner, right? But at the same time, how do we keep that first owner running that machine a little bit longer? And some of these upgrades are a mechanism to do that. Maybe it's a pause button to be able to get it to run long enough and depreciate long enough to reintroduce into the marketplace, right? At a point where it can fit. Right. We do the same thing with extended warranty on tractors. If a guy's running a tractor and he's intended to roll that tractor, within the warranty period, and maybe we've got enough of those low hour 1 and 2 year old tractors. Well, maybe the thing to do is to let that guy run it and let him buy some more warranty, or give him a good deal on some warranty, where we can reintroduce it a little bit later in the trade cycle. I
think what you're saying right there is really important, Lou. It's that measuring and guiding your used equipment marketplace based around what that looks like and how those things play together. And to me, you're exactly right. I don't need to have. When do I have too many of something, right? If I have 10 1-year-old combines with 300 hours on them, is 12 too many? You know what I mean? You have to start really measuring that and start looking at that, how that plays out, what that looks like. And the easy way to do that is, it's almost in our best interest to give away extended warranty after the fact, and run it for 1 more year and put X number more hours on it or something like that. To start
diversifying on the books and not be able to sell it,
and diversifying that machine population that you have out there.
Yeah, and that goes back to, and that's something, again, not so much with the upgrades, but with some other things, like the warranties and like some other kind of mechanisms that we're using. It's up to you. You've kind of got to go out there but the first thing you got to do is you got to go out there and, like, you're going to get a checkup. You need to check the health of your of your customer population. I mean, don't forget, we sold a lot of tractors. We sold a lot of used tractors. We may have even sold some used tractors to people that maybe didn't need to buy a tractor in the last 2 years, just because they thought that maybe next year they couldn't get one. So that's something important to understand. I mean, you got to go out there and take and kind of check that customer base and see, where are you? I mean, are you comfortable where you're at? I mean, normally that guy's on a 3 or 4 year trade cycle. When maybe he was only 2 years deep when he went ahead and bought one because he thought that maybe the sky was falling and there was just going to be no tractors for the next. I mean, I heard some crazy things, in the last couple of years about what people thought was going to happen. So I think it all starts with checking the health of your area and going back to that, where is that absorption? You can't use your mathematical, theoretical absorption right now. We will, like in a year or two, like whenever we can go back and we kind of know what that is. I mean, we've got it logged in an Excel file somewhere, how many of these we can sell a year and how many of these, but all of that is contingent upon like a steady trade process. And here's the other point I wanted to make, is it's critical. It's critical that we create or we redefine what those kind of thresholds are within our customer base. Because right now we're in a situation where, it's in our best interest. We can't operate if there's not a buyer for every one of those, if there's not a buyer for every one of those tractors for, that segment of equipment, it creates a problem. It doesn't matter whether the clog is up front or at the very back. So it's a conscious like chipping away at it every day to make sure we're all headed in the same direction. It's a challenge because I mean your sales force is not always going to be aligned on kind of strategic goals. So that's where we come in and kind of we're talking with our guys more than we ever have. I mean that is no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think the point you're making there is a valid point when you're looking at the amount of equipment that you've got. You need to understand what it is that your ecosystem is, where you're at, right? If you have a whole bunch of, 10-year-old 5,000 to 7,000, 8,000 hour stuff, and then you start introducing, you should be able to go back in and start saying, okay, let's introduce some of this 1-year-old, 2-year-old. So you should have buyers for those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
If you show up and you're in the middle of that, you're in that 3 to 5-year-old stuff, and that's where your market's lying at. To me, that's the sweetest spot to have if you have that kind of a place, because you've got the guys that are going to buy that used stuff that's coming in, but you also have the back end supply to go 3 or 4 washouts deep, right off the get go, right? Because you got that. If you're too far on one side or the other, it takes forever to fill that middle back up, and that's where we're at right now. And that's what we keep coming back to.
Or you're trying to do deals with the equipment with the improper asset. I mean, you're trying to make deals work, and you're trying to fit something, a square peg in a round hole, whatever the expression is, So again, focuses on keeping that balance. And the other thing to be cognizant of, or to be aware of, is not only like what the health of your ecosystem is, but step back a little bit, and I mean, this is an important point that I make almost every time that I get on one of these is, stay on the phone. I mean, talk with your counterparts around the country and figure out where they're at, because we're kind of bringing this thing full circle here in the sense that, we started the podcast talking about not all regions are created equal. Well, not all regions are created equal. And you may have one problem, another area may have another. And I think we as dealers are working closer together now than what we ever have. And we just need to continue on that path. I mean, there are still regions, due to the manner in which they seed their trade cycle, in other words, how they retail tractors, that are still short, that are of everything. of every equipment category. And if that guy stays on an island, he's going to struggle. Then let's not let him struggle. I mean, let's talk to each other and figure out how we can all get back to normal operating.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest pieces of information that I get every month that really helps paint the picture of what the market looks like is, that gentleman works for me every month. Every month he puts together a list of kind of what he sees out there on the websites, and we have one segment of that where you start breaking, 8R tractors down or whatever it is that you're looking at, combines, whatever, but you're looking at how many machines you have in a certain hour range on the internet, right? So you're like, how many combines, how many Deere combines, Case combines, all the way down the line, how many of those machines are in a 0 to 300 hour range? How many of those are in 301 to 500, all the way down? And to your point, you got to step back and take a look at the big picture, because what's going on in your particular neck of the woods may just be a precursor to what's going to go all the way across the country pretty soon, right? You just might be ahead of the curve, depending on what it is that you're doing. I think we saw that. You'll probably see that in your area with tractors way before anybody else does, just because of the amount of tractors that you guys, how many tractors it takes to farm in your area, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It doesn't take the same number of tractors to farm my area that it does in your area, right?
That's right.
So as you're looking at those kind of things, but on the flip side of that is, I'll sell more combines in my area than you sell in yours.
No doubt.
What happens in my area with combines is going to be a precursor to what happens in yours, but it might be 6 months, it might be a year, who knows how long it'll be before it gets to you. But understanding and watching that stuff develop, I think that's where a lot of guys get caught in a pickle. Is that all of a sudden they wake up and like, well, what happened? What happened? The wave has been coming for a long time. You just got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to what's going on around you.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's huge.
I'm sorry, Don.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the perfect example. I mean, whenever we're not a combine intensive area, and I mean, when we do run combines, they're not put, but a couple hundred hours a year on them, because it's just kind of like an afterthought. I mean, there's some larger growers, but I mean, it's the exception in our area. I mean, you get out and Clay's area out there a little further east. I mean, there's a little more field corn, but we were, all of a sudden corn started doing well, and we had a lot of guys. I don't know, it was a year or two ago that all of a sudden a bunch of guys are growing corn, and picked up the phone and called a couple friends of mine. I mean, around the country. I mean, it was like calling your mom and she hadn't heard from you in like 15 years or something. I mean, it was like the most welcome phone call ever. They had them, we needed them, and vice versa. We needed to move some tractors, they needed to move some combines, and we did some swaps that were tremendously, mutually beneficial. And it's a win-win. And just let that simmer for a second there. Neither dealership made any like crazy sacrifice. Right. Nobody like moved anything at a tremendous loss, or it was just a mutually beneficial swap. And I don't think I've ever had a deal where when you're swapping equipment versus you compare just selling something, again, unless you've got something that's tremendously impaired, the swap is always more mutually beneficial. I mean, there's more room for making things work, etc.
Sure.
So that's important.
Yeah. No. I think that's the key there, is that, again, going back to the whole thing of building, of understanding what's going on around you, right? There's so much information out there and so much data that you can pull down that will show everything you want to do, plus some, if you just take that whole thing in and look at the big picture and really just step back, take that approach of what it is and go from there. But I think you and I are thinking alike here when we look at what we see happening, how things are playing, how things are coming together. You know what I mean? I think it's a bigger, I want to put this. It's a bigger environment than it used to be, right? You could hide in a little corner of the world and kind of do what you need to do. take care of your 7 or 8 tractors that you traded in, and your 3 or 4 your combines that you traded in, and your 5 or 6 balers that you traded in, and you had 30 or 40 pieces of equipment on the lot, but it was a little bit of everything and not a whole bunch of one thing and a little bit of something else. Times have changed so much now that it's a whole bunch of everything now. That's what we have to deal with. You start looking at millions of dollars worth of tens and $20 million worth of stuff in just one segment. Not your whole inventory, just one segment.
Yeah. The good news is that, like I said, I don't mean to be repetitive, but the market has evolved, and the market has gotten and the business has gotten more sophisticated and evolved, but so have we, right? And that's the silver lining here is that I think a lot of people are doing, and I talk to a good many people around the country, and I remember when I showed up, whenever it was 6-7 years ago, and you'd get on I was just starting to make these calls and starting to get to know these dealers, and man, I'll tell you what, you talk about the sky's falling. You'd get on the phone with these guys, and they didn't know what to do. It was madness. Nobody knew what the hell was happening or what to do or who to talk to, or this is different. Obviously we're not there, but the conversations now are a lot more, all right, what do we do about it? We know this is what we need to do. This is what needs to be done. Let's just do it. Let's just put it into practice. And that's good. I think that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm not concerned.
Yeah. I'm not, I think, to your point, I think we've got some headwinds ahead of us. But it's a different kind of headwind than we've had before. It's a different looking animal than we've seen in the past. So 23 is going to be interesting, just like 22 and 21 were. So
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, that's a good place to stop, Lou. What's the best way for folks to reach out to you and pick your brain if they want to?
So cell is a 954-815-7981 or L Bordoni at flintequipco.com. Or if you're driving through Americus, Georgia or Southwest Georgia, hit me up. We may cross paths in a Cracker Barrel.
Cracker Barrel.
That's the best I could come up with. That's the best I could come up with.
That's a good one, though. The Cracker Barrel
for sure. My brain is at hit capacity.
I hear you. Okay.
I enjoyed it, man.
Lou, appreciate you being on, man. Always good to see you.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Take care.
Right on. In case you see more Moving Iron Podcast, check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast and see the YouTube version of this on the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. So check that out there. Go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related, and check out the blog posts that are out there as well. The entire library of the Moving Iron Podcast, plus the Moving Iron Summit coming up here September 11th through 13th in Nashville, Tennessee. Lou, you've been about, I don't know, 4 of those now?
More like 4 or 5.
Okay. What's your favorite thing about going to those?
Oh, geez, this is a trick question. This
depends
how rated. My favorite part is seeing that quiet guy in the corner out on the strip.
Oh yeah,
you get to know people on a whole different level. And I'm not trying to be funny there. It's building relationships, man. Building relationships is not a cookie cutter thing. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you achieve it.
Right. So if you were going to go talk to about 6 or 7 dealers about something, would you talk to them about the Moving Iron Summit and attending that?
Absolutely. I've always recommended it tremendously. It's a great event. By far, in my opinion, the best event in our industry.
I know. I appreciate
that's
that.
A big statement, but
that is a big statement. So
I hope not to get in trouble for that one.
Yeah, I think you'll be okay. All right. We appreciate you being on the podcast, buddy.
All right, bro. Take it easy.
All right, man.
Take care.
In case you see more with Lou Bordoni, it's going to smart folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century.